of the collaboration talk that we just talked about on our state and federal partners and that sort of thing. The Crisis Center funding in the 2019 budget was tied to lottery vending machines and revenue from the lottery vending machines. And that was okay. The unfortunate part is that they did not in that budget fund the purchase of the machines. So there were no lottery vending machines to generate revenue to fund the crisis centers. So COMCARE received their first half year payment of $1.3 million. So they got $650,000 in 2018, right at the end of 2018, to cover the first 6 months of the state fiscal year. The fix was to do a supplemental request for 2019 in the current legislative process to fund the second half of the 2019 fiscal year, so another $650,000. That was that was worked throughout the course of the year, throughout the course of the session. That was funded in the supplemental for 2019. Yesterday was the last day for the governor to veto items. She line item vetoed some funding for behavioral health. Included in that was the supplemental request for COMCARE. So right now we don't have funding for the current 6-month period of time, January to June, from the state to support the Community Crisis Center. Right now, the legislative solution for this is to veto to do an override of that veto. I've talked to Joan last night and today. It doesn't appear that there's going to be the votes to override that veto, at least right now. The Association of Community Mental Health Centers is working that issue right now. Joan's talked to a couple of different legislators already. It doesn't appear promising that they'll be able to generate the votes to override that line item veto. Administratively, one solution may be, if there is year-end funding in KDAD's budget, that they could provide some of it back to COMCARE. Unfortunately, the reason that the governor vetoed that line item was because she was trying to make sure she hit that 7.5% year-end the balance. Thank you. And again, this caught the department by surprise. Secretary Howard was not aware that this was going to happen, so everybody was caught by surprise here. So right now, the other thing that Joan and I have talked about is that we may have to strategically throttle back some services throughout the rest of the state fiscal year so that we can fund the crisis center till we get to 2019 state fiscal or 2020 state fiscal year, because the funding is in the budget for 2020. But right now we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do related to this shortage for the remainder of this state fiscal year.
That's not very good news this morning.
No, it's not.
It goes back to one of the questions I had over and over again when I was on, when Commissioner Meitzner and I were on the phone with Jason Watkins, was do we need to have a line in the budget for our behavioral health, especially for our crisis center? And no one seemed to want to take that on.
Sure, yeah.
And now it's come back to bite us because we don't have...
It's going to be under the umbrella of the budget, and so we did not push harder.
So
we need to push harder.
Do we need to call the governor? What do we need to do at this point?
Well, I'd let Mike weigh in on this too. I'm not sure that that the governor is in a position to be able to do anything differently, with the exception of directing the department to find funds within their current year budget. But I don't know that they're there. That's why they asked for the supplemental to fund this.
Where was the supplemental coming out of?
Well, it was a supplemental for 2019 funding. It's part of the budget, the 2020 budget. Not uncommon for them to do a supplemental for 19 as they approve the future year budget, their current year for the future year budget. So this just got caught up in that. I think her effort to get to the ending balance.
But they are going to try to override the.
Yeah, but if it's not going to work, and it doesn't sound very promising, that's not going to help us a bit.
Well, I don't know. I've heard that they think they can override that. I talked to Dan Hawkins last night, and it starts in the House. You said it just depends if people show up for the last day.
Is Hawkins aware of
Yeah.
this impact?
Yes.
What was the specific line item that, what, I mean, you say she feed, there's a line item, what does that mean?
Well, the total budget had a supplemental request for additional funding for behavioral health. I don't think that she recognized that this was foundational funding. This was not enhanced funding. This was foundational funding for the
Foundational
2019
meaning,
year.
traditional
Well, to
legacy.
get us through the
Yeah,
2019.
we have to have it in order to keep
To get through the 2019.
Crisis Center alive.
Mhm.
It was not additional funding for enhancements or anything like that. It was foundational. Again, it goes back to the way they had chosen to fund the crisis centers in the 2019 budget with
You-
that lottery funding.
Maybe after, can you give Lacey the words that she needs so she can help?
Yeah, I need to understand, I guess.
We need to call Jason also.
I'm looking at the calendar right now. We have a 2:30 meeting. All of you are meeting with GWP at some point, either this week or next week, and your two meetings today at 2:30. We could maybe just give Jason a call and talk with him about this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk to Jason, because if we can't get the veto overridden, we're gonna have to find out what else we can do up there. 'Cause this is more significant than about anything I've seen lately. And I think when our legislative agenda next year, as Mr. Popuna is writing down notes for what to put in our legislative agenda, we're going to have to do what I kept asking over and over again, that this gets put in to the budget, so that we don't end up with this situation.
So when you recommended this call with Jason?
Right at the beginning, you guys are meeting with GWP at 2:30, so I'd like to, just a few minutes before that, since I know you'll both be here. I'm not sure what your calendars look like today, so.
It might be strategically helpful that maybe Lacey sits in for me on that call.
Okay.
I have a 2 to 2:30 though.
Oh, you do?
I have an
Okay.
anchor
Then I'll do it.
institution.
Then let's look at the other side of that. What about 3:30 for you?
I can do that.
Okay, let's do it on the other side. Let's flip that then
Is that
and get
all right?
Jason
Is that
for
all right?
3:30.
Yeah.
I think it'd be
Mhm.
helpful.
Sure. Because we'll finish with GWP. Those don't take an hour, so we'll be able to leave that.
Okay, well, this is more important than GWP right now, honestly.
I just said that because I know I'd have, you guys were here today. I'd have to have Carol check your schedule. So, but we'll do something this afternoon. So.
Okay.
And then immediately get it back to the rest of the commission on what's happening.
Good. Anything else?
No,
You can't
Mike, did
even
you
end
want-
up with good news?
No, well, Mike is a new lawyer. You want to introduce him?
Yep.